This is the Ross Kaminsky Show. Now, Ross Kaminsky on Denver's talk station, 630 KHOW.
Well, good morning, everyone. Happy day after Yom Kippur. That was a bit of a challenging day, as it always is. You know, the hardest part about Yom Kippur, I think probably enough of you heard already, you know, that's why I was out yesterday, but nothing from sundown. Well, I did it from 6 o'clock to 6 o'clock. I did it from 6 p.m. to 6 p.m. So from 6 p.m. Tuesday to 6 p.m. Wednesday, no food, no drink, including water, no electronics of any kind. So no TV, no radio, no phone, no computer, no driving, no nothing. And I spent a lot of time yesterday doing two primary things, thinking and reading. That's pretty much what I did. And it's a bit of a challenge. It's not really that bad. You know what the hardest part is about Yom Kippur, Shannon? Having morning breath an entire day. Because you woke up yesterday morning with your normal Wednesday morning breath, but then you can't have water, you can't have any liquids, can't have mouthwash, can't brush your teeth, can't do anything. So basically you just stay away from other people so you don't knock them over with your breath. Anyway, it was an interesting, and I think for me at least, a useful day off, and I want to thank Krista Kafer for filling in for me so ably, and it's great to be back with you. We got so much to do today, and of course we need to really start off with just absolutely the biggest controversy, well, not only of the last several days or week, but maybe one of the biggest controversies of my lifetime, really, if you think about it. And I think I should just set this up a little bit with a bit of audio for you.
I have this special fish call, and they come right into the boat.
Oh, they do?
Mm-hmm.
You called them?
Mm-hmm.
He calls them. That's rich. This I gotta see. Go ahead.
Sure.
Call them.
You see, Bert, I have to call them really loud, though, so
Yeah.
they can hear.
Yeah.
You know, the fish are under the water.
Sure.
And so you have to call real loud so they can hear you through the water, you know?
Sure.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I call them like this. Fishy! One fish?
All right, so there's Ernie's fish call. Now, if you have been paying attention the last few days, have been able to work your way through all the Kavanaugh conversation, then don't worry, we'll get to that in a minute. You will have heard the major controversy over whether Ernie and Bert are gay. Now, for the record, I have always believed, at least since the time that I had any concept what gay was, I have always believed that Ernie and Bert were gay, and I have never cared because, after all, they are puppets on Sesame Street who primarily talk to very young children who have no thoughts about or interest in or anything regarding gayness. But anyway, so how this happened. So there's this guy named Mark Saltzman who was a writer for the show, and he actually did an interview with a gay website called Queerty, of course, Queerty, and he was talking about all kinds of things, not just this, about his career and so on. And the question came up, right? They asked him, okay, we have to address, this is the big question, all right? In the writer's room, you're all adults. Were you thinking of Bert and Ernie as a gay couple? Did the question ever come up? And the writer recalled a column from the San Francisco Chronicle in which a preschooler turned to mom and asked, are Bert and Ernie lovers? Which I suppose would tend to work against my thought that little kids don't know and don't care about these sorts of questions, although I'm going to stick with that for now. because I know at 7 I didn't care, and I'm pretty sure at 7 neither of my kids cared or had any ideas. Anyway, and that coming from a preschooler was fun, he said, and it got passed around and everyone had their chuckle. And then he said, and I always felt that without a huge agenda, when I was writing Bert and Ernie, they were. I didn't have any other way to contextualize them. The other thing was more than one person referred to Arnie and I as Bert and Ernie. In other words, the writer is gay. His boyfriend or partner, whatever you want to call him, his name was Arnie, so some people called them Bert and Ernie. And so he thought of Bert and Ernie as gay and sort of wrote them, having that in his mind, but didn't write them, I guess, I assume, to be overtly gay or anything like that. So then what happens? Frank Oz comes out, and I shouldn't use the term come out in this particular context because that has an entirely different meaning. But Frank Oz, basically the guy who created all this stuff, right? The Muppets and Kermit and Miss Piggy, who, by the way, so some of the gay rights folks out there are real upset about this because, let me just read you the Frank Oz tweet, and then I'll come back to that. It seems Mr. Mark Saltzman was asked if Bert and Ernie are gay. It's fine that he feels they are. They're not, of course. But why that question? Does it really matter? Why the need to define people as only gay? There's much more to a human being than just straightness or gayness. And Frank Oz is right about that. But there are some rather funny reactions out there. You know, one saying, well, it's fine for you to say these two have no sexuality at all when I guess a lot of the gay world likes having some gay Muppets or something like that. But you can't tell us that you always write Muppets to be completely without any sexual orientation because everybody knows that Kermit and Miss Piggy are in love. So so which is it? Oh my gosh. Then this guy who I think is, based on his texting, is a gay activist of some sort, or at least a gay person. He says, they're Muppets. I can't possibly summon the energy to have a position beyond whatever. Ernie did not throw the first brick at Stonewall. And then he said, we really have to stop talking about this. There are millions of queer people and thousands of LGBTQ artists. Didn't you forget the rest of the LGBTQ, A, B, F, M, R, what? The whole alphabet there, working on queer representation in media. It's not yet enough, but it's something, and fighting over these puppets is not going to get us anything. And then one that I actually think pretty much nails it. Another person on Twitter says, let's split the difference. Bert and Ernie are just roommates, but also they're both gay. Okay, one more. All this Bert and Ernie talk has distracted us from celebrating true queer icon Oscar the Grouch. Could be. Although, you know, I think, and if I can just stick with very unfair stereotypes, because I was, along with being the founder of the Bad Analogy Club, I was the founder of the Society to Perpetuate Harmful Stereotypes. I would think that at least your average gay man, based on the gay men that I know, and I do know quite a few, would not tolerate the kind of mess and filth that Oscar the Grouch so reveled in. And I'm not saying there's no messy gay man. I'm sure there's a messy gay man out there. But as long as we're going to stick with stereotypes, I just don't see Oscar the Grouch being the primary representation of the gay community, nor, by the way, should he be the representative of the straight community because he lives in a trash can. So that does argue for the whole thing, like, why don't we just keep the whole sexual thing away from these puppets? But I have to say, I laughed out loud, and I was exchanging text messages with a friend of mine who's gay. And he says he's always thought Bert and Ernie were gay. And then the conversation only went so far downhill, so fast from there with one of my gay friends that I absolutely cannot talk about it on the air. Oh, gosh. Here's another one. I'm a gay dad, and I want my son to know Bert and Ernie as a couple. And then he said, this is a Huffington Post article, I guess. Bert and Ernie being gay might seem absurd to some people, but it matters to me and my family. Now, you know, I'm just going to be slightly serious about this for a minute. Only slightly, though. To the extent that you are, a gay dad, which is already kind of an odd concept, isn't it? But that's the world we live in today. You're a gay dad. Okay, good for you. It's fine. Much rather have kids have a loving family than be in an orphanage or bounced around foster care. So I'm fine with gay dads and all that. No problem for me. But I think that this stuff really just should be, I think all this conversation about sexualizing characters in a TV show that is watched pretty much entirely by people whose ages are single digits is really inappropriate. And I think without wanting to be unnecessarily either politically correct or politically incorrect, just leave Bert and Ernie alone. They don't need to be gay. They don't need to be straight. They don't need to be anything. It's perfectly fine for them to be just friends. In a way, they remind me of The Odd Couple, right? And I don't think very many people thought that Oscar and Felix were gay. I don't think people really even asked the question. And I don't think they should really be asking about Ernie and Bert. So on the non-PC side of this, what bugs me about the whole conversation is this idea that we need to see gayness everywhere. We don't. I don't need to see gayness everywhere. I don't need to see gayness anywhere, really. And I don't need to see straightness everywhere, anywhere. You know, whatever. If it's part of a movie and there's a love plot or whatever, and it's gay or straight, I don't really care, or whatever, right? But it just doesn't need to be everywhere. And part of what's bugged me about the whole, movement and that tweet that I read you about queer representation in media. It's like, stop beating us over the head about it. And for the record, I'm for gay marriage. I'm not homophobic in the least. I don't care about homosexuality. I don't have any moral qualms with it. I've got plenty of gay friends and gay relatives. And really, I just simply don't care what people want to do in their personal lives, okay? It's fine. And as far as the political side of it goes, you've won, right? You've got pretty much every kind of gay right, marriage and everything else. It feels to me like equality. At least right now it does. Maybe not 20 years ago or 50 years ago, but right now it does. And what I get tired of is just being beaten over the head about it, where every TV show has to have a gay character. Even if there's only 3 main characters in the show, one of them's gay, even though only like a small single-digit percentage of the population is gay. It's just, get it out of my face. Just get it out of my, I don't care. I don't dislike you for being gay, but if you keep talking about it, I'll dislike you for talking about being gay all the time. That's where I am on it. Ernie and Bert, go do whatever you want to do, right? But I do have to say, it was a fun controversy for a few days. All right, we've got a lot to talk about when it comes to the Kavanaugh thing. And we'll talk about stuff over the course of the show. But here's how we understand the situation right now. At least one of the probably 4 Republicans who we've been talking and thinking about as sort of on the fence about how they might vote regarding Kavanaugh, in the sense of them saying, we got to hear from this accuser before I'm willing to go forward. So we're thinking about Bob Corker, Jeff Flake, Susan Collins, and Lisa Murkowski. Murkowski's been pretty quiet in all of this. The conventional wisdom is she'll do whatever Susan Collins does, but I don't know if that's really true, but that's how people are thinking about it. But at least one of them, Bob Corker, said, if this woman who accused Kavanaugh doesn't come to testify on Monday, when she's been invited to come testify before the Judiciary Committee, we should just move on and vote. And at this point, I think that's the most likely outcome. But I'm not saying I think it's 90%, but I think it's probably 50%. And then there's a bunch of other possibilities that could each be, 10%. But basically, Chuck Grassley has given the accuser, Christine Ford, until 24 hours and 39 minutes from now, so 7 a.m. our time tomorrow, to tell him whether she will, in fact, appear at the committee hearing on Monday to make her claim in public and answer some questions in public. She has been saying through her attorney that she probably doesn't want to testify unless there is an FBI investigation first, and the Senate is not going to order an FBI investigation, and the president's not going to order an FBI investigation on a guy who's been through 6 FBI background checks already to look at an accusation from something that happened or allegedly happened 35 years ago while Brett Kavanaugh was in high school at a party that the accuser can't place in terms of either location or date. Now, for the record, I am not saying that the accuser is knowingly lying. It's possible. It's also possible, though, that she actually believes it and that it's not true. It's also possible that she believes it and that it is true, but that's probably impossible to prove. Brett Kavanaugh has come out and emphatically denied this to every senator he's talked to about it, and they seem to believe him. The other thing, I think I mentioned this on Tuesday, it's worth mentioning again. One of the hallmarks of the Me Too movement and the men who have been taken down by this Me Too movement are that they all did it more than once. Now, you might say if they only did it more than once, they wouldn't have been caught up in it anyway, just because there wouldn't have been someone, or the likelihood of someone coming to testify against him. But you look at all of these people, Bill Cosby and Weinstein and what's his name? Bill O'Reilly and Roger Ailes and Matt Lauer and all these people, they all did it more than once. And if there were an accusation, another accusation against Brett Kavanaugh, then all of a sudden they become much more credible. And I've said this all along. This is the one thing I really want to focus on here for the next 30 seconds. And that is that true? She's got a $200,000 GoFundMe? For what? For her legal fees? For security. I'll tell you what, I would be a little afraid if I were her, and that's too bad. I don't think it's okay for her to feel fear for her life because she's doing this, but she's doing it the wrong way, and all of her friends are doing it the wrong way. And I'll tell you what, I'm going to finish my thought about this coming up after these brief words. Also have some unbelievable sound for you from one senator.
Now, The Ross Report on Denver's talk station, 630 KHOW.
It's becoming a pattern from the left. Drop a bomb on Brett Kavanaugh and then run away when you can't prove the implied or explicit accusation. During his confirmation hearings, the horrendous Kamala Harris asked a question in a tone of voice suggesting she had some damning information, so Kavanaugh better come clean about whether he ever had a conversation with someone at a particular law firm about the Mueller investigation. A day later, she asked a more specific version of the question. Kavanaugh said no, and Harris moved on as if nothing had happened. Cory Booker did something similar, aggressively releasing an email which actually showed Kavanaugh to be on the correct side, by Booker's standards at least, on the issue of racial profiling in airport security. Then we have the accusation by Christine Ford that a drunk 17-year-old Kavanaugh tried to do something to her more than 35 years ago, but now it's unclear whether she'll actually testify. She seems to be demanding an FBI investigation first. And on Wednesday, a woman who went to the same school as Ford but didn't know her says she remembers hearing something about the alleged incident, quote, indirectly and with few specific details, end quote. Now that woman says she won't speak of it anymore. Rush Limbaugh often talks about the drive-by media. Now we're seeing the drive-by Democrats and their henchmen.
This has been The Ross Report, presented by Alliance Leasing, your key to the perfect fleet at alliance.lease. Now, more with Ross Kaminsky on Denver's talk station, 630 KHOW.
All right, I tell you what, as long as we're talking drive-by, let me move away from Kavanaugh for a second. I'll come back to it in a bit, but I just have to do this. As long as we're talking drive-by, Shannon, there was an op-ed published in the Denver Post yesterday, I think it was. Yeah, yesterday morning. And I'm just absolutely furious about this. And you know what? I don't generally get furious about politics and stuff. I don't take it personally. To me, politics is a spectator sport that every once in a while has a serious impact on our lives, but most of the time doesn't. But still, I find it quite interesting. This thing is disgusting. This is a piece by an op-ed by Pat Schroeder, leftist congresswoman from Denver. And here's the headline. Walker Stapleton's running mate was complicit with the military's cover-up of its own Me Too moment. Now, I tried to actually, just before I tell you what this is about, I tried to send an email to a guy I know who works in the editorial department of the Denver Post to basically criticize them for this. And it bounced back, so I guess he's been fired too, like almost everybody else at the Denver Post. So I'll just have to go get the email address of whoever's in charge right now and send it again. Because this is an absolute libelous travesty piece of bleep by Pat Schroeder. And basically what she's talking about is, you may recall the Tailhook scandal. So Tailhook is a large annual convention held in Las Vegas for the U.S. Navy. And regarding the 1991 Tailhook Convention in particular, a whole dozens and dozens of women alleged that they were assaulted or harassed by members of the U.S. Navy there. Now, a bunch of people got in trouble, and I think Tailhook went away, and so you get all that. Now, Pat Schroeder says, we know that Sias attended Tailhook in 1991 when he was a lieutenant in the Navy. Even before the 1991 event became a national scandal, many naval officers were already avoiding Tailhook because they knew the convention to be a grotesque cesspool whose central appeal was the opportunity to spend a weekend drunkenly pursuing women. Now, then basically she goes on to say that when Lang Sias said, and I quote, she quotes Lang Sias, who, by the way, is just a wonderful guy and a friend of mine. So I want to put that out there. While at Tailhook, Lang Sias said, I engaged in no improper or illegal activity whatsoever, nor did I witness any such activity by my fellow naval aviators. And what Pat Schroeder says is that that's the stone wall of silence in action. In other words, Pat Schroeder is saying that Lang Sias must be lying about either not doing anything wrong or not witnessing anything wrong. It's absolutely unbelievable. Pat Schroeder says in four previous campaigns for office, Sias has never explained either his presence at Tailhook or his role in stonewalling the investigation into the events that took place there. Pat Schroeder, I got to slow down because I'm going to say something and get me in trouble. What I think, I'm just so furious that the Denver Post would allow this to be run. Sias has never explained his presence. Of course he did, because he was questioned about Tailhook back at the time. So, of course, he has explained it. And a role in stonewalling? How is it stonewalling if you say, I didn't do anything wrong and I never saw anything wrong being done? Assuming that's true, which I do assume of Lang Sias. Who knows? I could be wrong. But from what I know of Lang Sias, he's a truth teller. And to allow Pat Schroeder to come out and lie and smear and slander Lang Sias is a disgusting new low, even for the Denver Post. And I am beyond furious about it. Now, there's a letter in the Denver Post today that I want to share with you. Can you play Drive-By again just like a bar or two, if you can, DJ Shannon? I want to share this letter. And it says, I am compelled to respond to Pat Schroeder's drive-by hit piece on Lang Sias and his candidacy for lieutenant governor. And indeed, it is a drive-by, Schroeder. You should be ashamed of yourself. Schroeder provided a grossly misleading and false narrative with respect to Lang Sias' attendance at the Tailhook Convention in 1991. Listen carefully now, okay? Because you may have, if you end up at a cocktail party in Boulder with a bunch of liberals who, are going to support Jared and they'll believe anything, okay? They'll believe any negative thing you ever tell them about a Republican. And they may bring up this story. What about Lang Sias and Tailhook? I want to make sure you hear this. Lang was ordered to attend as the commanding officer's wingman in order that the commanding officer could travel to and receive the award for the best fighter attack squadron in the Navy for 1991, a year in which the squadron participated in actual combat operations in the First Gulf War, and then get back to duty on the East Coast to prepare for another overseas deployment. Lang Sias provided truthful testimony under oath to the NCIS when questioned. He later testified under oath at a court of inquiry that absolved he and his commanding officer of any wrongdoing at the 1991 Tailhook Convention. Like most Democrats with an axe to grind, Ms. Schroeder selectively cherry-picked facts that had nothing to do with Lang Sias in order to attempt to sully his sterling reputation. And I want you to listen to this next part carefully. I was there. I was the defense counsel for the commanding officer at the court of inquiry. There was not a hint that Lang Sias or his commanding officer committed misconduct, withheld information, or lied to investigators, and the Navy had every investigatory tool at its disposal to establish such conduct if it existed. It didn't. Past service as a member of Congress does not provide license to lie. Pat Schroeder, you should be ashamed of yourself. Denver Post, you should be ashamed of yourselves. Not that you have any shame anymore. This is one of the worst, lowest, most disgusting drive-by hit pieces I've ever seen, arguably even worse than what is being done to Brett Kavanaugh, because this comes without even an accusation by somebody. Unbelievable. Pat Schroeder, you are really a disgusting, low-life political hack. When we come back, something completely different. Every once in a while, your own city governments can really mess with you, and from time to time, it seems like we end up hearing some real bad things about some of these towns just south of Boulder, right? Like Lafayette and Westminster. Maybe those are places where people who want to live in Boulder but don't want to pay $1 million for a house live, but they're turning them into their own little Boulders. Well, Westminster wants to do something to their people that I'm going to share with you. Actually, we're going to be joined by a member of the Westminster City Council right after this. Hey, don't forget, folks, if you're listening to the show and you're going to be getting out of your car or moving away from wherever you're normally listening, you should have your iHeartRadio app. It's absolutely free wherever you get your apps. It'll allow us to keep in touch during the show. It'll allow you to listen to a podcast later. It'll allow you to listen to music, even set up. It'll learn what kind of music you like and play the music that you like. So that's some pretty good stuff. So go get your iHeartRadio app wherever it is that you get your apps. Now, every once in a while, and I should probably do more of this, but every once in a while, I like to bring you stories about local governments around the area. And it's not that everybody who listens to me lives in Westminster, but we're going to talk about Westminster right now with Dave DeMott, who's a member of the Westminster City Council. My point is that people need to be aware of what their local governments are doing, and these stories can provide object lessons. It does seem, as I said a few minutes ago, that some of these towns just south of Boulder in particular are starting to feel to me like places where people who would like to be Boulderites but would not like to spend $1 million for a home are moving and then turning these otherwise nice towns into radical leftist places or places that are really, really trying to get your money and other such things. And so with that long introduction, let's go to Dave DeMott, a member of the Westminster City Council. Good morning, Dave. Thanks for being here. And what is the City Council looking to do to people who live in Westminster?
So on Monday night, we'll be voting on a rate increase, which most cities go through some sort of rate increase for their utilities, on a yearly basis. So this rate increase will be over 2 years.
This is for water, right?
Correct. For water and sewage. So,
and sewage, okay.
Yeah, because you have to pay for both of those things. So, typically the staff will propose, here's what the needs are, and here's what the increase we recommend is. And the trend is, that the needs ends up on the ratepayer back. And so, to be short in it and not get too into the weeds, I've asked for other options. I seem to be the only one who wants other options on how we keep our system sustainable and take care of our water. There's the saying that whiskey's for drinking and water's for fighting, and that water's one of the most important things that a council deals with. So I think it should be high up on the priority list of how we take care of it. And I don't think it's sustainable to continue to see huge increases.
So tell us some of the numbers. Tell what kind of price increases are Westminster residents looking at if this passes?
Yep, real quick. So there's 3 tiers, and they do it like per gallon. So the first set of gallons is up to 4. It used to be 4,000 gallons. So they increased that tier to 6,000 gallons, and that tier goes from 321 to 357 in the first year, and then up to 396 the second year. The second tier is when you see a big increase. It's actually 38% the first year, and that second tier goes from 532 to 735, then up to 815 in the last year, and then everything above 21,000 gallons is basically goes up to 1162 from 792, and then up to 1288 in 2020. And I think the troubling thing, Ross, is that there's no end of this kind of increase in sight. When you say where does the system become sustainable, and we're only raising rates at the rate of inflation, I can't get an answer. I seem to have a consensus that that's where we want to go, that we want a stable water, but I haven't seen that actual plan, or have I heard what they think build-out is. So the bar consistently is raised.
Okay, so I'm a numbers guy, as I'm sure you know, Dave. And as I look at this, I see that Tier 2 and Tier 3 numbers go up massively over the course of a couple of years from Tier 2 from $5.32 to $8.15. That's just an absolutely enormous increase. And then Tier 3 from $7.92 to $12.88. So you're talking about almost 50% there. But what I would like to know is what percent of Westminster water users get into Tier 2 or into Tier 3? So what would we expect the effect on the average water user to be? Because if a lot of people are in if people now are in the top part of Tier 1 that used to be Tier 2, you can imagine it being around a break even for some people.
Yeah, and so what I did was I took some bills of, say, a male and a female who are retired and live in a typical suburban home in Westminster. I did the same thing with a family of 4 kids. And, like in light usage month, that, both of them don't see much of an increase like in January. The real hit where people go into that Tier 2 is when they have to water their lawns in the summer. And so, like, when you look at what the city has put out, and they put out a calculator, and they give you the average over a year, which I think is, in my mind, it's hard to look at and realize what's going on, because most people will see, like, I think they said 70-something% will see, like, a $10 a month increase average. But it's average. So people don't plan out most people who are on paycheck to paycheck don't plan their life out on average. They say, here's how much money I have this month, here's how much my bills are. And what the trend I'm seeing, and I was at a volunteer.
And we got about 45 seconds.
Yep. Last night I was at a thing, and the thing I've heard from people is that they're not going to water their lawns. People already have stopped watering their lawns. So if you're concerned about it, go to City Council on Monday night, 7 o'clock. You get 5 minutes to talk to us. We'll be voting on it 92nd and 8th, the 24th, this next Monday. So
I want to encourage people, if you live in Westminster and you don't want to see your water bills, especially these Tier 2 and Tier 3 levels, go up by 40 and 50%, go make your voice heard. And generally, folks, I think this just points out the broader idea. Pay attention to what your local government is doing. Look at the agendas, be in touch with city council members so that you can prevent bad things happening to you or make things better. And you know how it goes. Dave DeMott is a member of the Westminster City Council. Thanks for being here. Thanks for bringing the issue to our attention, David.
Yep, have a good day.
Okay, you too.
Bye-bye.
All right. I'll tell you what, when we come back, a real-life version of something that's almost like Jurassic Park may soon be a reality. I'll tell you about it right after these words on 630 K-How.
This is the Ross Kaminsky Show. Now, Ross Kaminsky on Denver's talk station, 630 K-How.
All right, I dig this story. So I like the Jurassic Park movies, or at least the first one's really good. Second one's sort of, okay. The first one's awesome, though. And the concept, right? The concept. It's like the Jaws movies. The first one's amazing. Second one, after that, give me a break. Like they turned into Sharknado after that, right? Is that unfair, Shannon? Shannon thinks that's unfair. I saw this story over at the UK Mirror website, and I'm digging it, and I want to share it with you. Headline, woolly mammoths could return to roam in Ice Age Park within 10 years thanks to cloning project. And then the subhead, mammoths died out around 4,000 years ago, but scientists believe they can bring them back by cloning DNA material from remains of the giants found in permafrost. So this is pretty cool. So there's an area in Russia, the eastern, I guess it's basically eastern Siberia kind of, called Yakutia, Yakutia, and they found a whole bunch of woolly mammoth skeletons and remains there. And when you dig into the bones of some of these things, especially since they're, and I'm going to put this in air quotes, only several thousand years old rather than millions of years old, depending on how they were preserved, there's a pretty good chance that they can get DNA out of quite a decent number of specimens. And as I understand it, they are going to try to clone these things. And I can't tell yet whether they're going to try to do this in test tubes or whether they're going to use modern elephants as surrogate parents or what it might be. But I love the idea. I absolutely love, and 10 years from now, if there is a park where there are woolly mammoths walking around, I'm definitely going to go. The park could also act as a home, according to this article, to cave lions and extinct horses, which scientists are trying to clone from remains that are 40,000 years old. And American experts are also working on a return of the mammoths. So that's a pretty cool story, and I hope it happens. And what a great way to get tourism to Russia. There isn't much other reason to go to Russia as far as I can tell. At least certainly not that part of Russia. I would definitely go to see a woolly mammoth walking around. It reminds me a little bit in a very odd way because it doesn't really have anything to do with it, but with one thing we're going to talk about tomorrow on the show, which is the name of the person has been announced who is going to be the first SpaceX basically tourist customer to go to the moon. And we're going to talk about that tomorrow. Would you do that if you could afford it? Well, would you go to Russia to see a woolly mammoth if you could afford it? I would definitely go to Russia to see a woolly mammoth if I could afford it. All right, let's do something completely different, shall we? And again, I'm intentionally taking a little pause from Kavanaugh. Don't worry, we got plenty of Kavanaugh coming your way in a while. But I want to do something very different. Go to our VIP line, where we're joined by Andra Heritage, who is the executive producer of the Smithsonian Channel's new TV show, Secrets, which premieres next Monday, 8 p.m. Eastern. I guess it'll be 6 p.m. our time on the Smithsonian Channel. And it's actually a perfect tie-in, actually, with what we were just talking about, bringing back the woolly mammoths and all that sort of thing. So good morning, Andra. Thanks so much for being here.
Good morning. Thanks for inviting me.
So just briefly tell us what you're going to do, kind of in a macro sense. We don't need to do specific topics yet. We'll get to that. But what is Secrets all about?
Okay, so Secrets it's an incredibly exciting show. What we do is we take a new discovery, a historical, archaeological discovery, or new evidence at an old site that you might already know of, and we unravel a mystery with the sort of conclusion and the journey along the route, basically turning a lot of things on its head. So it's kind of looking at taking a fresh look at some old favorites, but with some really surprising results. So ancient Egypt, the Vikings, these are general topics that we then sort of burrow down into specifics.
So I've seen some of the topics you're going to cover, and they're quite fascinating. I want to ask you about a couple of them specifically. So in all the stuff that was going on in Syria and Iraq, there were a lot of ancient ruins that were, or not even ruins, ancient sites that were destroyed by ISIS, and you have found that the destruction of one of those unlocked perhaps some evidence behind the story of Jonah and the whale?
That's right. Certainly, potentially the presence of someone called Jonah during a time that was, well, the world was pretty turbulent at that time anyway, but a sinful city, as mentioned in the Bible, and a possible king who could fit very well into the biblical tale of Jonah and the whale.
So did you find something there that actually has the name Jonah, or a name very close to the name Jonah?
No, what happened was that when ISIS went into Mosul in Iraq in 2014, as you said, they systematically destroyed pretty much everything they could get their hands on, and amongst them a lot of the world's most sort of ancient and precious artifacts. And they also destroyed a shrine, a 1,000-year-old shrine to the prophet Jonah, that was in a very special place in Mosul called Nebi Yunus. When they retreated 2.5 years later, archaeologists went in to survey the damage and actually discovered that what had been uncovered underneath was an ancient palace. And the artifacts that they've discovered under the sort of mound that the shrine was on basically indicate that this was the palace of a proper old-fashioned baddie called Esarhaddon, who was a big ruler in the ancient world, and it's his palace, and he could well have been the sinful king and the sinful city that Jonah visited.
Wow. And did you personally get to travel out there by any chance?
Unfortunately not. In fact, no one did. We had to, because it's so dangerous out there now.
Oh.
And we have filmed in Iraq in previous series. We filmed at the Real Tower of Babylon, which is about 50 miles south of Baghdad, but with close protection. This was last year. This year, because ISIS had just retreated, they were very concerned about the presence of IEDs. And in fact, the archaeologists that went in, one of whom was from the Smithsonian Institution, they had to be really careful, really super careful, because who knew whether booby traps had been set?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, it was, so with one hand they destroyed something, but with the other, the destruction that they wreaked on the region actually did uncover one good thing.
Right. Well, yeah. Probably not worth it, but still at least there's something. Our special guest is Andra Heritage. She is the executive producer of the Smithsonian Channel's Secrets that premieres next Monday on the Smithsonian Channel. I've got you only for about another 2 minutes here, so let me ask you about one more. The Viking stuff is really interesting. Now, are we talking about a question of why we don't find a lot of graves of Vikings that actually have dead Vikings in them?
Well, yes and no, because there are Viking remains and you can find them. But in this particular grave, and they knew it was a grave because it was a specific type of grave, and one presumably from an elite Viking warrior, because often they didn't have graves like this, your standard Vikings. So it was a two-chamber grave, and they found grave goods in it, but no body. And sometimes bodies get dissolved if the soil is very acidic. But in this case, they believe that the body was actually removed, and that's the crux of the tale, because that explains possibly why the Vikings as we know them, the sort of plundering, pillaging, murdering nation that, had Northern Europe running for its lives back in the sort of first century, the 10th century, basically why they disappeared from history 1,000 years ago.
Wow. Well, I'm really looking forward to the show, Andra, and I want to thank you so much for giving us so much to think about and for your time this morning.
Thank you very much for having me.
All right, glad to. So the Smithsonian Channel show Secrets premieres next Monday. Should be 6 p.m. our time on the Smithsonian Channel. Check it out. Oh, this stuff does look really, really interesting to me. Here's a 3,000-year-old crime scene involving a lost Egyptian princess that would eventually lead to the fall of the pharaohs, and a site found in the remote Israeli desert that may contain the real mines of King Solomon. Some cool stuff there, and not science fiction. So I dig that, and I thought it'd be fun to share that with you. Okay, I'm working Kavanaugh in over the course of the show today, and I wanted to, let me just find this one, 2 articles that I wanted to mention to you. So on Wednesday, I think it was, there was a woman named, let me get her name for you. There's a woman who went to the same school as Christine Blasey Ford. And this woman, her name is Christina Miranda King. Now, she says, I did not know her, meaning Ford, personally, but I remember her. The incident did happen. And then she says, many of us heard a buzz about it indirectly with few specific details. And then she goes on to add her own little sort of Me Too spin on it. However, Christine's vivid recollection should be more than enough to truly deeply know that the accusation is true. No, it's not. But I have way more to say about this story. So just keep that in your mind for a second. Because this was all over the internet. And, this is, I'm reading to you actually from NBC News. So a lot of these big networks covered it. That this woman who didn't know the accuser says the incident did happen because many of us heard a buzz about it indirectly with few specific details. So everyone covered it. Oh, look, there's corroboration, right? Oh, my gosh. Okay, now I'll come back to that. Then another story that didn't get nearly the attention, even from CNN, which is the group that broke the story. They didn't really do anything with it once they published it on the website. In a letter to the Senate Judiciary Committee, another former classmate of Brett Kavanaugh's denies attending a party like the one described in the allegation made by Christine Blasey Ford. Patrick J. Smith, S-M-Y-T-H, attended Georgetown Prep, an all-boys school in North Bethesda, Maryland, alongside Kavanaugh. Both men graduated in 1983. Smith signed a letter this summer before the allegations against Kavanaugh were made public, testifying that Kavanaugh is singularly qualified to be an associate justice on the Supreme Court. Now, there was another letter then once this stuff came public, and here's what the letter says. I understand that I have been identified by Dr. Christine Blasey Ford as the person she remembers as PJ, who supposedly was present at the party she described in her statements to the Washington Post. I am issuing this statement today to make it clear to all involved that I have no knowledge of the party in question, nor do I have any knowledge of the allegations of improper contact she has leveled against Brett Kavanaugh. Personally speaking, I have known Brett Kavanaugh since high school, and I know him to be a person of great integrity, a great friend, and I have never witnessed any improper conduct by Brett Kavanaugh toward women. To safeguard my own privacy and anonymity, I respectfully request that the committee accept this statement in response to any inquiry the committee may have. Okay, so a lot of news media outlets yesterday ran with the woman who did not know the accuser saying that the event happened, okay? But they didn't run with the story of a guy who the accuser said was at the party who says, I was never at a party like that. So they run the third-hand allegation, but not the thing from the guy who is actually accused of, from one of the guys who's actually accused of being there. Now, I'm not done. So they run that story, and then we get this morning from NPR, by the way, not anybody's idea of huge Brett Kavanaugh supporters. Right, Shannon? Headline from NPR this morning. Kavanaugh accuser classmate, so they're talking about the woman I just described to you who said that she heard about the event and believes that it happened and all that. Kavanaugh accuser classmate, quote, that it happened or not, I have no idea, end quote. Again, from NPR. Okay, this is not Fox News, National Review, Breitbart. This is NP freaking R. A former classmate of Christine Blasey Ford tells NPR that she does not know if an alleged sexual assault, should I say alleged? I like alleged, by Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh took place as she first suggested on social media. That it happened or not, I have no idea. I can't say that it did or didn't. And then even NP freaking R says that's different from what Miranda wrote Wednesday in a now deleted Facebook post that stated definitively the incident did happen. Many of us heard about it in school. Now she says she has no idea. Miranda's new comments are a significant development in what remains a largely she said, he said account of events between Ford and Kavanaugh. In my Facebook post, this woman says, I was empowered. See, there's a problem with empowerment right there. Okay, you were empowered to say stuff that you didn't actually know because you thought it was sharing some kind of girl power? Come on. And I was sure that it probably did happen. Wait, were you sure or was it probable? I have no idea that I had no idea that I would now have to go to the specifics and defend it before 50 cable channels and have my face spread all over MSNBC News and Twitter. Oh, you didn't? Didn't you see what happened to Christine Blasey Ford when her thing came out and all the names of the other people that have been brought up, the names have been in the media constantly, and now you're saying you thought you could just run out there, say it happened, and then go hide under a rock? With just another drive-by? Are you kidding? I don't think so. Now, this woman said, to all media, I will not be doing any more interviews, no more circus. And then, to clarify my post, I do not have firsthand knowledge of the incident that Dr. Ford mentions. And I stand by my support for Christine. You know what? It's absolutely fine for you to support your friend or a woman just because she's a woman or whatever, but it's not okay to lie about it and make stuff up. And this, my friends, is, I think, one more reason that Brett Kavanaugh is going to be confirmed.
Kurt offers securities through Cambridge Investment Research, Inc., member FINRA SIPC, and advisory services through Cambridge Investment Research Advisors, Inc., a registered investment advisor. Cambridge and Centennial Capital Partners are not affiliated.
All right, 7:34 on this Thursday morning, and that means it is the day and time to talk to our friend Kurt Cambier from Centennial Capital Partners. And on Thursdays, he picks his favorite listener question of the week that he thinks others of us might benefit from hearing the answer to. But Kurt, before we get to that, can you just give me a very brief comment on your thoughts about the S&P 500 being at a new all-time high at this very moment as we speak?
Yeah, sure. It surpassed the January level here just recently. So if you put money in the S&P index in the peak day in January till now, you're finally going to make some money. So it's not so important necessarily when you buy. It's more important when you sell. And the aspect is that this is the greatest economy in the world and the greatest country in the world, that ultimately we will continue someday down the road in time hit all-time highs. It just is inevitable. Market declines are temporary. Market advances are permanent. It's never guaranteed, and past performance does not guarantee future results. But, we'll continue to have momentum. Everything's actually, stocks are actually a bigger value today than they were back in January because the PE ratios are much more affordable.
Very good. All right, thanks for that. I appreciate it. Let's get to your favorite listener question of the week.
Favorite listener question of the week is real simple. So what's the biggest mistake that I see the listeners are making when they come in to talk to me? And I can round it out in one word: overconfidence. Overconfidence in what they have, how much they're going to earn, and their ability to continue to grow their assets. And I mean that in everything from real estate through stocks through everything else. If you look at what's happened in the last 9 years, anybody could have at least doubled their portfolio during that time period. It wasn't that difficult to do. So, because markets are up close to 300% from the market bottom. So if you look at that, there's a lot of self-proclaimed geniuses out there that maybe in the market going forward the next 9 years won't seem so brilliant. And this is not an amateur's market, and you should dial back your expectations.
It's a great, I get this all the time too, from listeners, from friends, from whoever. They're like, okay, I'm doing great. I doubled my money, and they think they're smart, but really In fact, this is another thing, Kurt. A lot of these folks, they actually underperformed the market, even though they're up big. A lot of them tried to time the market, or whatever the reason is, they actually underperformed. And it's a little bit odd, but I hear all the time the exact kind of overconfidence that you're talking about from people who even underperformed the market.
Yeah, no question. They don't realize they underperformed, though. They just looked at the growth in their assets and say, well, I've done really well.
All right, so what can you do for those people listening to us right now to get their confidence, to eliminate overconfidence and get them in a realistic scenario that will help them plan better?
Well, like any good accountant or any financial person would tell you, you need to base your estimates on a more modest return than what you may even ultimately get, so that it's easier to overshoot your goal than it is to undershoot your goal. So in that's the first thing we would do. The second thing we do is explain why this economy going forward is not the same economy it was the last 9 years. It's a whole different ball game. Mm-hmm. And remember, if you're just a passive investor, which is the way to have been the last 9 years, it's like driving through the mountains. And I'm in Grand Junction heading back to Denver today, driving through the mountains without any steering wheels and without any brakes in your car. It's going to take you wherever it's going to take you. And right now you're at the mountain, hitting the mountain peak, about to go the other side some day down the road, and it might get a little scary for you.
Folks, you want to sit down with Kurt, who's been helping people with their retirement planning, financial planning, investments, and so on for over 30 years. I encourage you to get in touch with him either through the website at kurtcambier.com, KURTCAMBIER.com, or by phone. You do it, Kurt.
303-584-1161. Give me a call. I promise I'll return it.
Excellent. Kurt, we'll talk to you tomorrow for your Friday fun fact or quote or whatever fun you bring us.
I look forward to being in the cooler temperature of Denver.
Have a safe drive home, Kurt.
Thanks.
All right. Bye. Okay. Hey, I wanted to share something with you for literally just about 90 seconds here. Every once in a while, I mean, we know how a lot of people feel about President Trump, people in the media in particular, right? It goes beyond not liking him. It goes to a level of insanity that you have to wonder how they can even function in society or how they can live with themselves. And I see a piece that I just wanted to tell you about briefly by a guy named Jack Schafer, Schafer, who writes a lot of stuff for Politico. I think he's an editor at Politico, just to give you a sense of how off balance these people in the media, liberals in the media, are. Here's a headline. Trump's final days, subhead, one day, whether next year or in 2021 or in 2025. I wonder why he's saying next year. What do they mean? Like he's going to be impeached or something? It's real weird. He'll be asked to leave the White House. What if he won't go? Oh my gosh. Now, I do remember, I have to say, let's just be fair here. I do remember there were a lot of people who really, really hated Barack Obama. Even more than I hated Barack Obama. A lot more, in fact, who were spreading these odd conspiracy theories around the interwebs along the lines of Barack Obama is going to cancel the next election and just stay in office. And of course, I would respond, if I did respond, I would respond on Facebook or Twitter or something like along the lines of, don't be a freaking moron. It doesn't really deserve more than that. And now you get the left doing the same thing. And this guy asks, what if, after having moved into the White House and gotten comfortable, President Donald Trump refuses to check out when his term ends? Preposterous, you say? Yes, Jack, I do say preposterous. No president, not even Trump, would dare to defy 200 plus years of political tradition, not to mention the Constitution, to illegally overstay. Yes, Jack, that's exactly what I say. And then he says, how sure can we be that our norm-busting president won't attempt to shatter this inviolable standard too? And I'm not even going to read anymore. I just wanted to make sure you understand how some of these folks are talking. Okay? And this actually does tie into some stuff I want to talk about later in the show and even in the next segment of the show about Republican complacency going into this election. I think that's the biggest risk. What we're going to do in the next segment is we're going to talk with Josh Penry. Josh Penry works with EIS Solutions. He's a founder of EIS Solutions, or a partner, and he's a strategist for the Mike Coffman congressional campaign and has been in the 2014, 2016, and now 2018 campaigns. And I'm going to ask him about a new poll in the Denver Post that shows Mike Coffman behind his Democratic opponent. I think you're going to find this a fascinating conversation. We'll do it right after this. All right, let's get right to it. Joining us on our VIP line, my friend Josh Penry, former Republican leader in the state Senate, currently a partner at EIS Solutions and strategist for the Mike Coffman for Congress campaign, which he also was in 2014 and 2016, where I would posit that Mike Coffman faced more credible challengers than he does this time. But, Josh, I'm a little less confident this time, and I wanted to ask you to address a poll that the Denver Post wrote about that shows the Democrat Jason Crow ahead of Mike Coffman.
Well, thanks for having me, Ross, and we'll debate my haircut another time. Remember, bald is beautiful. But thanks for having us on. We, obviously work with the Coffman campaign, and it's been a real honor to. He's a tremendous leader for the state and country. And, it's sort of that old Mark Twain saw about rumors of demise. Every election cycle, we hear this is the toughest race he's ever going to have. And on some level, it's true. This is a tough election. It's a difficult district. But Mike is remarkably resilient because he represents the district well. There was a poll that's been pushed around all over the place. It was actually a New York Times poll, the Denver Post, and some other local outlets pushed out that said Mike was down by 10. And it's just, polls are polls, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time calling names, but it's just fundamentally not accurate, not a reflection of where this district is. One of the reasons Mike has performed so well, we know this district, we know it performs, we know where our votes are, and we know how to make a winning case. So greatly exaggerated, not right. This is a margin of error race. It's a very competitive race every cycle, and that's going to be the case this time as well.
And folks, if you see Coffman campaign commercials on TV, these are done by Josh and his team at AIS. Josh, I have a question for you that's much broader than just the Coffman campaign. Just as you look at the election season, I have a feeling, even more actually with some of the governor's ads and the Coffman ads, that this is going to be a relentlessly negative campaign season. Do you see it that way? And is it that way because that's just what works these days, or that's the mood of the country right now? How do you see it?
Yeah, they are tough races, and I know people get tired of it, and I think actually probably a lot of people in the political class get tired of it as well. But it is, but these are also tough fights with real consequences. Jason Crow was handpicked by Nancy Pelosi to run in this seat because they thought his profile and resume would help her become the Speaker of the House. I mean, that's the bottom line. So they're spending, literally more than $1 million a week,
a week?
In American
Did you say a week?
A week, yeah, right. So, and that's part of what's going on in the polling. Jason Crow's getting a little sugar high because the spending advantage on his side is so prohibitive. But we've been through this rodeo before. We ran against Andrew Romanoff and Morgan Carroll, both when we were more experienced, formidable candidates. And by the time the election ran its course, obviously it turned out the way it did with a decisive victory for Mike.
How does Mike Coffman, as a Republican, do so well in a district? I don't know the number. I'm guessing D plus 2 or 3, but I don't know. How does he do that?
He just works hard. I mean, that's part of it. And we also prosecute our case. Mike is not the most conservative member. That's why facially, Jason Crow and Pelosi's entire argument is Mike votes with Trump 96% of the time. Anybody who reads the newspaper knows that's not the case. And they want to put their eggs in that basket. We're ready for it. We will deconstruct that door-to-door, face-to-face, TV ad by TV ad over the course of the next several weeks. But people just know fundamentally it's not true. They know Mike is an independent person. He's his own person. And he's at every barbecue. He's at every Kiwanis Club meeting. He's meeting with immigrant communities. He's meeting with small business owners. It's hard to smear a guy like Coffman, and make no mistake, that's Crow and Pelosi's game. It's hard to smear a guy when you know him, and this district really does know him. So
that's a good point.
We've got to tell Mike's story, and we're going to do some vetting of our friend Jason Crow.
Okay, I've got about 90 seconds left, and I want to go down a road you just went down a little bit there. Every once in a while, I'll get a listener who is in that district, and I'm in Kaufman's district as well, and for the record, I've contributed to his campaign, who says, well, Kaufman's not pro-Trump enough or not conservative enough. And I say, you realize your alternative is a Democrat. No matter where you are on the Republican side, you're not going to do better in that district than Mike Kaufman. Do you want to elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, we go through that. It's part of the challenge of representing this district. Mike wins his primary at the assembly phase. Our numbers consistently show Republicans coming home because they know Mike is his own person. Whether you agree with him on every issue, he votes the district, he represents the people, and that's why more conservative voters who don't agree with some of his votes, are with him in the end. But it also goes to the heart of the dishonesty and the deceit that's implicit in the Pelosi and the Crow argument. Kaufman is his own man. Everybody knows that, and that'll be the argument we have over the next couple of weeks. And rumors from the New York Times of Kaufman's demise are once more greatly exaggerated.
Separate from that poll, is your gut instinct right now? I don't know whether you have polling or not, or whether you'd disclose it if you had it. But is your gut instinct that this is a very tight race right now?
It is, but it is every cycle.
Yeah,
this is a margin of error race. Like right after Labor Day, this thing is a jump ball, and so we know we've got work to do. In that sense, it's not exceptional, and so we're not getting spun up about this poll or this headline. We're slow and steady wins the race, and that's our approach, and we expect to come out on top on Election Day.
Josh Penry of EIS Solutions, strategist for Mike Kaufman for Congress campaign. He helped him win in 2014 and 2016. We'll see what happens in 2018. Thanks so much for being here, Josh. Appreciate it.
You're the man, Ross. Thanks for having me on.
All right. When we come back, is the GOP having a senior moment?
This is the Ross Kaminsky Show. Now, Ross Kaminsky on Denver's talk station, 630 KHOW.
All right, there was a headline. I'm trying to get this story going here. It's a headline over at, I think it was CNN. The GOP's older voter problem. So that's one issue I want to talk with you about briefly. And then the other one, and I think actually I'll do this first. And because I mentioned it when we were talking with Josh Penry about the Mike Kaufman campaign, is Republican complacency. Now, I'm not trying to bring anyone down. I'm just doing some straight up analysis here. I've thought for a year or more that suburban women, soccer moms, are going to absolutely wreck the Republican Party in November. I still think so. And I still think it's going to happen next November. Now, I might be right, I might be wrong. That's not even the point. The point is, when I have this conversation with my listeners on the air, by text, by email, by Twitter, whatever it is, with my listeners and with other folks who are strong Republicans or more specifically strong Trump supporters, they simply don't believe it. And there is a new poll that kind of reinforces this, and I want to share it with you a little bit. And this story is from The Hill. A leaked survey conducted for the Republican National Committee found that a majority of President Trump supporters don't believe that Democrats have a chance to win back the House during November's midterm elections. Bloomberg Business on Tuesday published this survey, which was completed by, I don't need to go through all that, a polling firm a couple of weeks ago. The results are likely to augment GOP firms' fears about Trump's base not showing up for the midterms, when the president himself will not be on the ballot, but House and Senate majorities are in play. Now listen to this. I find this really interesting. 57% of people who identified as strong Trump supporters said Democrats don't have a chance to win big, while only 37% believe they do, according to the poll. So 57% of strong Trump supporters do not believe that there's a blue wave coming. Now, I don't know whether there's a blue wave coming or not, but if too many Republicans, too many Trump supporters are so convinced that it can't happen that they don't vote, that even a small blue wave, not a blue tsunami, just a small blue wave could be enough, will be enough to give Democrats a majority in the House of Representatives, and maybe, as crazy as this sounds, considering how different the conversation was 6 or 8 months ago, maybe even a majority in the Senate, which is the reason Democrats are doing what they're doing regarding Kavanaugh, and we'll come back to that. Now, in this poll, the majority of respondents, not just Trump supporters, but when you look at everybody who responded to the poll, 71% said it was extremely likely or somewhat likely that Democrats would win the majority in the House in November, compared to only 25% who didn't agree. But a big, big percentage of the people who don't agree are Trump supporters. And again, the key now when you think about elections is not, is there going to be a blue wave or not? It's not, am I right that suburban women are going to crush Republicans? That's what I think, but I could be wrong. It is, do enough Trump supporters discount the possibility of a blue wave enough that they just won't vote because their man Trump isn't on the ballot, that even a moderate amount of suburban soccer moms or young voters who don't like Trump very much or whoever showing up allows Democrats to win. So that's one fear of mine, very much. And I think it's a risk for Mike Kaufman as well. And I would repeat what I mentioned on the air with Josh Penry a few minutes ago and what I've mentioned on the air several times before. And that is, if you vote in Mike Kaufman's district, then unless you're a liberal or a Democrat who wants a Democrat to win and wants Nancy Pelosi to be Speaker of the House, if you're thinking of withholding a vote from Mike Kaufman because he's not sufficiently pro-Trump or he's not sufficiently right-wing or whatever it might be, you're crazy. And so I repeat this again. And speaking to my friend Joe, who called in a few months ago, Joe, an active Republican, active in party politics, lives in Kaufman's district as I do, and said that he probably wouldn't vote for him. Joe, and everyone who thinks like Joe, you're out of your freaking minds. There is no more conservative alternative to Mike Kaufman who can win that district. And by the way, Mike Kaufman is already quite conservative. He is easily the most conservative candidate who can win that district, which is not a conservative district. You're talking about a district that includes Aurora, right? So I am going to vote enthusiastically for Mike Kaufman. I contributed to Mike Kaufman's campaign. And if Jason Crow is listening or any of his people are listening and, want to be on the show to make your case, you're more than welcome. You're more than welcome. I'd be happy to have you on. I've had Diana DeGette on. I've had Jared Polis on. I treat my Democratic friends, the loyal opposition, quite well. Jason Crow, you're certainly welcome on the show. But I do think that this idea of Republican voters just being complacent is a very serious risk for Republicans right now. And I think Republicans everywhere need to, Republican operatives, campaign operatives everywhere, need to tell voters that Democrats are exceptionally motivated in this election. The enthusiasm right now is much higher on the Democratic side. And the only way that Republicans are going to save themselves is by raising Republican or Republican-leaning independent motivation to prevent Nancy Pelosi from becoming Speaker of the House to a level that gets at least kind of close to the Democrats' motivation to express how much they dislike Donald Trump by voting against any Republican they can find. And right now, if I were a Republican, I'd be real scared because I think too many Republicans don't believe what I'm saying. I think a very large number of Trump supporters, including possibly some of you listening right now, simply don't think a blue wave is possible, and you don't believe any polling and all of that stuff. And it just really, really has me quite worried. And I'm not a Republican. I just desperately do not want Nancy Pelosi to be the next Speaker of the House again. And I desperately don't want the next 2 years of American politics to be taken up with Democratic chairmen and women of every House committee looking for a reason to investigate the president and anybody who works for the president and the president's kids and all of that stuff. But I will tell you, I do think that's what's coming. I do think that will be the result in November. We shall see. All right, I want to do something very different right now. Go to our VIP line where we are joined by Seal Prinster, who we've spoken to a couple times before. Seal is the CEO of the Colorado Enterprise Fund. And about a year ago, we had Seal on the show to talk about Denver Startup Week, which celebrates the entrepreneurial spirit right here around us in Denver. It's going on again this year. So, Seal, good morning. Thanks so much for being here. And what do we need to know?
Good morning, Ross. It's a pleasure to be here this morning, and thank you for having me on again. Yes, you've got it right. Denver Startup Week is going to happen next week, September 24th through 28th. It's in its 7th year, and it's the world's largest free celebration of the entrepreneurial spirit right here in Denver. Last year, the event brought nearly 20,000 people together through 350 programs to celebrate this thriving entrepreneurial ecosystem we have and, to help build our city's culture of innovation, which certainly is alive and well and growing every day.
So what will Denver Startup Week be able to offer to my listeners who are interested in starting or expanding their own small and medium-sized businesses?
Well, there's a little bit of something for everybody. This year, there's going to be more than 375 events, so it's growing still from last year's record high. That's going to include a wide variety of sessions, presentations, panels, workshops. There's happy hours, social events where they can network, job fairs, and you just got to go on their website to see the plethora of things that are going to be offered. And that website is www.denverstartupweek.org.
denverstartupweek.org. One of the things that I saw in your press release, which I think is a very interesting topic, and maybe you can just touch on it briefly, is alternative funding sources for early stage startups. And I assume you're not on that particular panel. You're doing a lot of other things. But just as a concept, can you talk about that?
Well, actually, someone from our organization, Colorado Enterprise Fund, is on that startup panel, and I'm on another one called, I forget what it's called, but it's about barriers facing underserved entrepreneurs and the programs that are available to them. But basically, a lot of people think that if you start a business, you have to try to start looking for venture capital. You have to start big with lots of money. But really, so many businesses get started with a little bit of money, $50,000, $25,000, $100,000. And, honestly, banks are getting to where they are not interested in those small amounts for businesses. And it's really, there's a lot of other sources for borrowing at a reasonable rate from nonprofits like Colorado Enterprise Fund. We really look at those startup challenges that a business owner might have securing a loan, and maybe they've used up a lot of their capital if they're already in an early stage. And so we can work with them to get the capital that they need to be able to succeed and grow.
So give us a sense, Seal, of the range of size of loans that Colorado Enterprise Fund, that you're the CEO of, will make to the startups that get through your process and are deemed worthy of the loan.
Yes, and really we make loans to any type of business. We really don't have a lower amount, so we'll just basically start at $1,000 and we go up to $500,000.
Wow.
We also partner with banks when there are larger projects or as businesses will work with us over the years and grow and need more capital. But the other thing we provide is business coaching. It's all free. We have also professionals from attorneys to accountants that will help them to get their financial statements and records in order and help them understand what they mean. So these alternative sources of capital and support are really critical for businesses that are just getting started. And the startups are not just tech startups. A lot of times we think of Startup Week as that, but oh my gosh, you'll see these really amazing food entrepreneurs and services that are just really outstanding, restaurants, all sorts of really creative and innovative businesses that participate.
So, folks, if you think that these events could help you start your business, get funding for your business, Denver Startup Week, most of the events are free and open to the public, though you should register. So if you go to denverstartupweek.org, you can register, you can see more about the events, and you can also learn more about SEAL's organization, Colorado Enterprise Fund, at coloradoenterprisefund.org, where you can learn more about the loan programs that they have. SEAL, thanks so much for being here, as always. I appreciate you and what you're doing for Colorado's entrepreneurial spirit.
Well, thank you, and I think it'll be a great week. The kickoff breakfast starts on Monday morning, right first thing in the morning, and I'll be there and at several other sessions. So look for our staff and really dive into Startup Week Denver.
Very good. Thanks a lot, Seal. I'm sure we'll talk with you again soon.
Okay, Ralph.
All right.
Thanks so much. Have a great day.
Okay, you too. All right, folks, check it out, denverstartupweek.org. I think that could benefit a lot of folks. I know right now unemployment is so low. I don't know how many people are, but there's always someone out there who's got an idea, wants to start a business, trying to think about, do I know what I need to know? Do I have the money I need? So not only can these folks be a source of money, but they more importantly, actually, they can be a source of good ideas, which are often the main thing between, and good management techniques, the main thing between a successful business and a failure. I can tell you, having lost an enormous amount of money in investing in small companies and made some money too, that when you are, I wasn't planning on talking about this at all, but when you are investing, especially in smaller companies, but big companies too, you are really investing in management way more than you're investing in the product or service that they're selling. And a great manager or a great management team has a pretty good chance of making a successful business out of a product or service that might be, let's say, good, but not necessarily great. And the other side is a bad manager can absolutely destroy a company, even if the company is based on a product or service that is excellent. And I've been there. Right? I have invested in companies where I still to this day know that the product was amazing and the management was terrible and I lost all my money. So the reason I mention that is if you're thinking about starting your own business or expanding your own small business, these kind of events, right? Denver Startup Week and stuff from the Colorado Enterprise Fund, I think a lot of people look at them and say, oh, there's a source of funding, which is a good thing. Like, oh, I can go, borrow $25,000. That's fine. But it's way more important, as Seal mentioned, the business coaching. That's what is really going to determine whether you succeed or fail in business, is whether you or whoever you hire is a good manager. All right, we're going to do something a little different when we come back before we get back to Kavanaugh, because I got more to say on him as well. But next, if you rent out a property through Airbnb, some folks want to massively raise your property taxes in Colorado. I just realized producer Shannon often does Facebook Live broadcasts, especially when I have interviews and stuff. And so now I'm just reminded because I see the still that we posted on the blog of my conversation with Josh Penry, and I'm reminded of the shirt that I'm wearing today. It says Snacksident, and it's like a dictionary entry, Snacksident, and then an N in parentheses, like it's a noun, and then it says when you eat all the bacon by mistake. Now that is a very excellent shirt and an excellent definition. But I wonder if I should feel a little bad about wearing a bacon shirt the day after Yom Kippur. No. Yeah, that's right. I got a whole year to apologize for this one. You know what? Give me 30 seconds on this because I keep getting texts and emails, even though I feel like I've explained this enough already. I keep getting texts and emails about, Ross, why do you do Yom Kippur since you're not a religious person? And again, for those who missed it, I do it because I like to take a day to have some discipline in my life and think about how I can do things ranging from my job to my more important jobs as a husband and a father, how I can do them as well as possible. And I guess it's sort of like a New Year's resolution kind of thing, except I really spend a lot of time, like hours on Yom Kippur, thinking about these things and thinking about how I can do things better. And for me, it's not really about God, but that's not the point. I don't need it to be about God in order to have, I think, a similar kind of individual impact separate from the religious implications of Yom Kippur, which are a very big deal in the Jewish religion. But that's why it's important to me. So people keep asking me that question, even though I guess it's just, different people listen at different times, right? So if I explained it at 7:30 and you're someone who listens at 8:30, then, you might not have heard it. Oh, speaking of someone listening, let me just mention real quick, and I hope it's not too late. I want to give a shout out to Eric. It's Eric's 16th birthday today. So Eric, if you're listening, happy birthday. And since you're 16, you are a man in the eyes of the Jewish religion. And I know your dad is Jewish. I assume you're Jewish. Therefore, I hope you had an easy fast yesterday on Yom Kippur. So happy birthday, Eric. All right, now, headline from the Denver Post. I don't even know why I'm quoting the Denver Post because I'm so pissed off at them for their Pat Schroeder thing, which I'll come back to in case you didn't hear that earlier. Headline, Colorado could raise property tax rates for short-term rentals like Airbnb. And what this says here is that there are some folks in Colorado who are thinking about how to get more money into the government, because they always are, and they're thinking about how they can raise taxes, because they always are. And one idea that they have, especially, and now they're couching this as if this is a major thing for rural areas, and I'll share with you the way the Denver Post reporter puts it, as elected officials across Colorado struggle to avoid steep budget cuts to rural fire stations, libraries, and other public services, one group is looking to short-term rentals, such as Airbnbs, for a possible solution. Right now, those properties are valued and taxed as homes, but a draft bill awaiting approval from the Alternatives to the Gallagher Amendment Interim Study Committee, that's a mouthful, isn't it? That's definitely a mouthful, would make owners pay commercial property tax rates for every short-term rental, which is defined as a property that is available for rent for periods shorter than 30 days. They quote the Summit County Assessor Beverly Breakstone, who says, we have people who don't live in the area who own 10 or 15 condos. We're thinking from the fairness point of view. No, you're not. You're thinking from the money point of view. Assessment rates are basically what portion of your property's value can be taxed. A state constitutional amendment called Gallagher set those rates, and in 2018, it was 7.2% for residential and 29% for commercial. If the owner lives in part of the house, it would be taxed like a bed and breakfast, where the private parts of the home are assessed at the residential property tax rate. If the owner doesn't live in the house, the whole house would be taxed like commercial property. The change would create more commercial property in the state, which means it would change how Gallagher is calculated and potentially reverse the trend of falling property taxes across rural Colorado. In Summit County, and this is quite interesting, actually. In Summit County, where about 1 in 5 homes is used as a short-term rental, this could raise the amount of assessed value in the county by 63%. In Mineral County, the increase could be as high as 51%. That's a lot of extra potential dollars for counties staring down the barrel of a constitutional trigger that's expected to cut residential property taxes by 15% next year. It's complicated, right? Because property values have gone up a lot in Colorado. Under Gallagher, property tax rates will be forced down under Gallagher, and commercial property will have to take more of the burden. In any case, I sort of understand the concept, but I also kind of hate it. I mean, I guess I have a negative gut reaction to property tax, to tax increases generally speaking, but you own these properties, you rent them out. And what I think is not being seen here in a Bastiat kind of way, that which is seen and that which is not seen, right, is if property taxes go up the amount that they're talking about, and remember, you're talking about rental properties in Summit County, you're talking about expensive stuff. I mean, a small condo in Summit County that's in a place anyone would want to rent, you could easily be talking about $500,000, right? It's more expensive than Denver. And then you get out to by Vail and all that. I mean, you can imagine, right? And so if you raise the property taxes a lot on those places, then those people will have to raise the rental prices by at least some amount to cover that. And there's basically two different ways that this can happen. So either they'll have to raise the rental prices a lot to try to cover it, but then fewer people will rent because the cost of coming here will be too much. And so then the towns in Summit County, right, I don't know, Breckenridge, let's say, will have fewer tourists. Or they will have tourists who will spend less money when they're out at restaurants and shops because they had to spend more money on what it cost them to rent the home or the condo. So there's that. The other side is that, let's say, the owners of the properties decide they can't raise the prices very much because people won't pay more. Then what will happen is the value of the properties will drop. And what these assessors think they're going to get in higher tax rates on quote-unquote commercial property, they will lose as the value of property throughout the county drops because of the higher tax rate. And look, I'm not saying that there is no grain of something worth considering in this idea. What I am saying is I am just so tired of all these people who talk about every new tax as free money when actually there's a really good chance that, because this is how it always is, that the market will do something completely different. All right, in case you weren't sure about how President Trump feels about Jeff Sessions, he just made it even clearer, and it reinforces my view that Jeff Sessions will not be the Attorney General of the United States on New Year's Day 2019. We'll be right back. All right, there's so much to talk about. Oh my gosh, the news just never ends, and then you miss one show. And it was Yom Kippur yesterday, so I have no idea what Krista Kafer talked about. But thank you, Krista, for filling in for me yesterday. I really appreciate it. President Trump gave an interview to Hill.tv, so kind of like the little in-house TV operation of the Hill.com. And in it, he said, and I quote, "I don't have an attorney general. It's very sad." And he continued, "I'm not happy at the border. I'm not happy with numerous things, not just this." And by this, he means Sessions' decision in March of last year to recuse himself from the Russia collusion investigation. Now, just for the record, I don't really think Jeff Sessions had much of an option. I know that Sean Hannity and some other folks say Jeff Sessions didn't have to recuse himself. As I look at the Justice Department regulation and guidelines, I think he probably did have to. Not because he was a Trump supporter, but because he was an actual active surrogate and part of the campaign. I think he kind of had to. But in any case, that's water under the bridge right now. So Trump continued, "I'm so sad over Jeff Sessions because he came to me. He was the first senator that endorsed me, and he wanted to be attorney general, and I didn't see it." So now Trump is making it sound like he thinks that Sessions' endorsement came because Sessions wanted to be attorney general, and that's the primary reason. That's how Trump is talking about it now. Now, I don't know that Trump actually believes that. In fact, I don't think Trump actually believes that. I think what Trump is doing is setting up all of the foundation, not that he actually needs much more than he's got now, set up all of the foundation to fire Jeff Sessions. Probably this year, probably after the midterm elections, but not much after is my guess. The only thing I can imagine that might, and this is just only possibly maybe, get Donald Trump to not fire Jeff Sessions would be if Democrats took back the majority in the Senate. But you could actually find an angle there where Trump might relish that fight with the Senate. He might say, you know what, I don't care about Jeff Sessions. Let him go. We'll have an acting attorney general for however long it takes for the Senate to confirm someone. And if the Democrats running the Senate don't want to confirm my attorney general nominee, we'll try to make them look bad. Of course, they'll try to make him look bad, but we'll try to make them look bad, and it'll give me something to run against in 2020. Same thing that'll happen if Democrats take back the Senate. Anyway, Trump continues. And then, he's talking about Sessions still, he went through the nominating process and he did very poorly. I mean, he was mixed up and confused, and people that worked with him for, a long time in the Senate were not nice to him, but he was giving very confusing answers that should have been easily answered, and that was a rough time for him. Don't you like that? And that was a rough time for him. So I can't tell from that quote whether President Trump is trying to make Jeff Sessions sound like a guy who was lying or trying to sound like a guy who's got the onset of dementia or something like that. It feels like it's one of those things, doesn't it? It's pretty incredible. He gets in and, quoting again, probably because of the experience that he had going through the nominating when somebody asked him the first question about Hillary Clinton or something, he said, I recuse myself. And now it turned out he didn't have to recuse himself. Actually, the FBI reported shortly thereafter any reason for him to recuse himself, and it's very sad what happened. Now, Jeff Sessions said, I recused myself not because of any asserted wrongdoing on my part during the campaign, but because of the Department of Justice Regulation 28 CFR 45.2 required it. In any case, it doesn't really matter what you or I think of Jeff Sessions. Like, for the record, I don't like Jeff Sessions, and I never wanted him to be Attorney General of the United States because I think he's just an old-school troglodyte who is against criminal justice reform. He is against letting states that legalize marijuana manage it their way. He is a guy who claimed to be a pro-Constitution kind of guy, and yet he really isn't, in my point of view. He's more of an executive power kind of guy, and he's everything that I can't stand when it comes to kind of the right wing of the Republican Party in criminal justice. But I also think he's getting kind of a raw deal from President Trump. President Trump gave him the job, didn't have to give him the job, gave him the job. Sessions probably had to recuse himself, and it should have been obvious going into that, should have been obvious to Trump that Sessions would have to do that. So for Sessions to beat him up this way in public, I kind of think isn't fair. I hope he goes, but I still think it's not fair.
This is the Ross Kaminsky Show. Now, Ross Kaminsky on Denver's talk station, 630 KHOW.
All right, let's talk a little Kavanaugh this morning. I haven't done too much because it's all over the news and it's probably all you're hearing, but I got some things to say. First of all, I want to start just to kind of, maybe you're a late riser, maybe you got up just an hour ago and you're heading to work now, and I just need to help wake you up a little bit, maybe raise your blood pressure a little bit. And I'm going to do that by playing just 24 seconds of audio for you from Senator Hirono, a Democrat from the state of Hawaii, talking about, well, it initially starts off a question to her about the Republican, basically white men on the Senate Judiciary Committee that she's on, and how she's thinking about how the white men are treating the accuser of Brett Kavanaugh. Here we go.
I expect the men in this country and the men in this committee, and many of them, believe me, because we all signed on to this letter to demand an FBI investigation, but really, guess who's perpetuating all of these kinds of actions? It's the men in this country, and I just want to say to the men in this country, just shut up and step up. Do the right thing. For a change.
Wow. Now listen, if I could use a really bad analogy, one of the things that I talked about this morning, just sort of goofing around, was the whole thing about Bert and Ernie and whether they're gay or not, right? And one of the things that I said was, I really don't care about, not only don't I care whether Bert and Ernie are gay, I don't care whether you're gay, right? It doesn't make any difference to me. Okay? I don't care what you do in your private life. I don't care who you love. I hope you're happy. And that's it. I hope you're happy. It's really quite simple. What I added to that was probably the only thing that really frustrates me about this whole gay conversation in America these days is just how much I feel like I'm beaten over the head with the message in the media, right? Whether, especially television, but other forms of media as well, but especially TV. It's like every TV show has to have 1 or 2 or 3 gay characters, even though gays are a single-digit percentage of the population. And again, I don't care. I just feel like I'm just constantly being slapped in the face with, you must accept us, you must love us, you must do everything. And look, I already accept you. I have forever. I'm for gay marriage. It's all fine. Just leave me alone, right? I don't walk around slapping my gay friends and telling them they need to accept the fact that I'm straight. And for the record, most gay people don't like it either. Most gay people that I know, my friends and relatives who are gay, they know that this kind of over-the-top, in-your-face is actually not good for them. It's not good for how people feel about gays to have this constantly in your face. Okay, now, think about this senator. And let me just skip ahead just a few seconds so we just get the key point.
It's the men in this country, and I just want to say to the men in this country, just shut up and step up.
Right? So, look, just shut up and step up. How is the average man in America going to react to any woman, but a woman senator, telling us all, right? And she didn't narrow that to men who did this or men who think that or anything like that. She just said all men should shut up. They should shut up and step up, by which she, I guess, means shut up and support her efforts to stop Brett Kavanaugh from joining the Supreme Court of the United States. Gosh, I have so many things to say about this. I don't even know where to start or where to continue. I've said forever on the air, for those who've been listening to me for years, you know that I am no apologist for men who behave badly. You know, I could easily have been, if you were listening to me some years ago when I did weekend mornings on KOA, I could easily have been the first radio host you ever heard say that Bill Cosby is a serial rapist who should be in jail. I said same thing about Harvey Weinstein after just a few accusations came out, or after that article came out. It was clear. Why is it clear? Multiple accusations from women who don't know each other, who have similar stories, showing a pattern of behavior. It doesn't matter whether you like or dislike this or that person's, media career as Cliff Huxtable or Bill O'Reilly, whether you like his political views on Fox News, or Harvey Weinstein, whether you like the movies that his company makes. It doesn't matter. I'm a husband. I'm a father of a daughter and a son. And their politics don't matter to me at all. These Cosby and Weinstein and other miscreants. And I called them out for what they are. And so nobody can honestly say that I will reflexively support someone who committed some kind of sexual assault or rape or something just because I maybe like their politics. And I am getting those emails either from people who are just jerks or maybe from people who don't know me very well. But let's talk about Kavanaugh now. And some people talking about, the Anita Hill thing or Bill Clinton. So first of all, the Anita Hill thing, and again, I don't know what's true and what's not true, but the accusation was of something that was much more recent between two adults, and they looked into it and decided whatever they decided, and Clarence Thomas got confirmed, and there they are. Oh, one quick aside. there are a bunch of people out there saying, there's a very clever argument, that really Brett Kavanaugh should be calling for a full investigation into this because his reputation will be ruined going forward if he doesn't. And there will always be this cloud over him at the Supreme Court if he doesn't call for a full FBI investigation. Now, seriously, I want to ask you, what person other than the most rabid left-wing nut, when they think about the Supreme Court today and decisions that come out of the Supreme Court today and last year and the year before that and for 5 or even 10 years before that, and get an opinion, let's say, from Clarence Thomas, what percentage of people other than the most rabid left-wing nuts ever think about Anita Hill when it comes to Clarence Thomas? Almost nobody, I would suggest to you, including Democrats. And I think this argument that Brett Kavanaugh should call for an FBI investigation because otherwise, if he gets confirmed, he will have a cloud over him for as long as he's on the Supreme Court. It is wrong. It is a manipulative argument which is intended to make people wonder why Brett Kavanaugh won't call for an FBI investigation into something that he absolutely swears up and down never happened, and that the other two guys who were accused of being at one of them being in the room, another one at the party, both say there was no such party. I wasn't there, that never happened, and I don't know of Brett Kavanaugh ever doing anything like that. Why would Brett Kavanaugh call for an investigation into that? And the other thing that's going on is that Democrats' goal here is to delay for a couple of reasons. One, the obvious one, the midterm elections are coming up, and they hope that if they win back a majority in the Senate, and somehow Kavanaugh isn't confirmed in that interim period then between the election and the swearing in of the new Congress, that they will then be able not just to block Kavanaugh, but to block any Trump Supreme Court nominee for the rest of the time that he's president. That would be their goal, unless somehow he put up a liberal. But there's another point that isn't being talked about as much. And I don't have in front of me the calendar of all the cases that the Supreme Court is hearing in their next session, but the Supreme Court's next session starts 11 days from now. And I guarantee you there are some cases in there that the lower courts, the courts of appeal, which are typically the courts that were the last court to hear a case before it gets to the Supreme Court, although every once in a long while they will take a case that comes from a court below the appeals courts. I'm sure there are some cases in what they're hearing where the lower courts came out with a verdict, an opinion that sided with the left, that sided with the liberals, that sided with some way where they have fear that Brett Kavanaugh would go the other way. And they want to delay his confirmation to the Supreme Court so he can't participate in some cases. And therefore, they expect some of these things to end up in a 4-4 tie, which would leave the lower court's ruling in place. That's certainly also part of what's going on. Let me just get back now to Hirono for a second, because this is just so infuriating.
It's the men in this country, and I just want to say to the men in this country, just shut up and step up.
Now, how really do you think that's going to play politically? I mean, there are men who are Democrats. Now, I don't know if the average man who's a Democrat is some kind of, I don't want to say any words that I'm going to regret, is someone who is willing to have a woman tell him, just shut up. Now, I don't think most Democratic men are that way, although I think there are probably more such Democratic men than Republican men who are just willing to have a woman tell them to shut up. But I'm not willing to take that, hear that. No, I won't shut up. Why don't you shut up? Why don't you sit down and shut up? Can I say that to an Asian American female senator? Sure I can. Sit down and shut up, Senator. And I just mean that person to person. I don't mean because you're Asian American. I don't mean because you're female. I do kind of mean it because you're a senator. I wish more senators would sit down and shut up. But who the bleep are you to tell us to sit down and shut up? All men? Are you kidding? Now let me bring this to the next point now. The Democrats have overplayed this hand. Now, this is still a very dynamic and very chaotic situation. But I think so far I'm feeling confident in my prediction from several days ago, even when some friends of mine who are very, very smart about politics were saying, this is going to take down Kavanaugh and he's not going to get confirmed. I said, I think he will. I also said a few days ago that it would not surprise me at all if this woman doesn't come and testify. And they'll come up with excuses for it. She feels unsafe or whatever. Now the excuse is, well, she wants to have a full FBI investigation first. They'll find a reason. And then they'll say, but we didn't hear from her and we can't vote until we hear from her. Yeah, but she had a chance to come. She had a chance to come, and she was offered to do it in a public hearing or a private hearing, and apparently they've even offered to allow her to do this in a private room with just some Senate staffers, maybe even going to her in California. And still the answer, at least through her lawyer, is no. Producer Shannon pointed this out to me earlier. A GoFundMe campaign to help cover the accuser's security costs. And this is being done by a woman who doesn't know the accuser, doesn't know her, but says, due to death threats, Dr. Christine Blasey Ford, who uses Dr. Blasey professionally, and her family have had to leave their residence and arrange for private security. Let's create a fund to cover her security expenses, to do just a bit to make it easier for women in her position to come forward despite great risks. Okay, let me make a couple things clear. One, nobody should be threatening this woman. And I understand why she feels fear for her physical security, and I wish it weren't that way. There are crazy people out there or overly partisan, overly emotional people out there who are threatening her. There's no doubt, and it shouldn't be that way. And frankly, I don't really object to somebody raising some money to help her cover her security costs. I get it. I get it. The woman who's doing this is a professor of law at Georgetown University who says she has raised money for lots of other causes over the years, and she will make sure that the money gets where it's supposed to go. And they had an initial goal. I don't even know what the initial goal was. She kept raising the goal, raising it, eventually raised it to $175,000, and then last night stopped accepting money when they raised $210,000 from 6,658 people in one day. So I get that. And I get that the far left hates Donald Trump. They're really frightened of Brett Kavanaugh, and they are willing to do anything and everything, but that's the real issue. Okay? She shouldn't feel afraid for her life and her physical safety. It shouldn't be that way. But you got to understand what happened here. Okay? And again, I'm absolutely not excusing anybody who makes a threat against that woman. Okay? I'm just looking to explain why some people might be really upset. And one good explanation, actually, one way I can kind of bring this to you in a way that kind of takes my emotion out of it, is to share with you some of a letter from Chuck Grassley, who's the 85-year-old chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee, a letter that he wrote yesterday to Senator Dianne Feinstein, who is the ranking member on that same committee. For those of you unfamiliar with the terminology, ranking member means the most senior member on the committee of the party that is not in power. So the party in power has the chairman, and the party out of power has the ranking member. He sent a letter to Dianne Feinstein, and I'm not going to share all of it, but he says, I'm writing a request that you provide me a copy of the letter dated July 30th, 2018 that you received from Dr. Christine Blasey Ford containing allegations of sexual assault against Judge Brett Kavanaugh. My staff has made repeated requests for this document, which has become a significant piece of evidence in Judge Kavanaugh's confirmation process, but your staff has so far refused to provide a copy of the letter. You are able to share this unredacted copy with all the members of your caucus and their staff, as well as anyone you choose. The only version we have is a redacted version contained in supplemental FBI background information file that only senators and a handful of very select staff are authorized to read. Now, there's more here. Gosh, there's so much more. Your staff could have raised these allegations during routine background investigation phone calls in late August. Questions could have been asked of Judge Kavanaugh during his more than 32 hours of testimony. Before the committee, over the course of 3 days, you could have asked him about these allegations during the closed session of his confirmation hearing, where sensitive material can be discussed, but you did not attend the closed session. Finally, they could have been addressed in one of the nearly 1,300 written questions issued to him after the hearing, more questions to any Supreme Court nominee than to all prior Supreme Court nominees combined. And he goes on to say that he is exceptionally disappointed. And I think this is really an important thing. When Grassley, these people don't use words like that with each other. Grassley is disappointed with Dianne Feinstein and her behavior, and so am I. It's way beyond disappointment. It is anger. It is fury. It is an unbelievable, disgusting, dirty trick. And when we come back, I'm going to tell you about another dirty trick being played right here in Colorado. Hey, one real quick thing. Shannon, you appreciate this email from a listener. I mentioned a couple times earlier in the show when we were just goofing around talking about this huge scandal over whether Bert and Ernie are gay. And I said, I just don't care if someone's gay or not. Like I said, just go be happy. Just stop beating me over the head with the message that I have to accept, love, or whatever gay people. I already, isn't just not caring good enough? I don't run around.
You make bath time lots of fun. Rubber ducky, I'm awfully fond of you.
Yes, Ernie pretty famously with his rubber ducky, which has nothing to do with being gay or not. And again, I don't care. So I got an email from a listener whose name I won't use, obviously, but he says, I'm gay, and I could not agree more with you. Same with the Me Too movement. Enough is enough. I don't even watch TV anymore for these and other reasons. Stop beating us over the head. You've already won, which is good. I'm on your side. Right? Gay people I'm talking to. So anyway, thank you for the rubber ducky sound. That's very, very good. Okay. Now, we were talking about all the drive-by attacks, and you heard it in my Ross report, the drive-by attacks on Brett Kavanaugh. And I mentioned in my Ross report, it's a phrase that Rush Limbaugh really made quite famous, the drive-by media. And Democrats have done this kind of thing before, but in a way now against Kavanaugh that really is kind of a new low, right? So Kamala Harris asks him this question, did you ever have a conversation with anyone at this particular law firm about the Mueller thing? And Kavanaugh looks confused, he said, I know these are big firms. I know lots of people. What are you talking about? Who are you talking about? But she made it sound like she's got him, like she's got some kind of tape recording of him having a conversation that he shouldn't have had. And then, he says, I don't know what you're talking about. Can you be more specific? So the next day she comes back and says, did you ever talk with, and I don't remember the name, but she names a particular person about the Mueller case, the special counsel investigation, And he says, no. And then she's like, all right, and then moves on. But she had spent all that time as if you've got someone on a camera and you've caught him, robbing the 7-Eleven, and you're trying to get him to confess and make him, at least suggest to him, you've got him on tape. And then he's like, no. Okay, moving on. And then Cory Booker with his whole Spartacus moment. And I'm going to release this confidential email because it's so important that we get it out there. This information people got to know. And it turns out not only that the email wasn't confidential anymore, it had been cleared the previous night and Cory Booker knew it, but that when you actually go and read the email, which I did, and almost nobody else did because this is what Cory Booker did, I'm going to release the email about racial profiling. Now, of course, when you got a leftist who wants to be president saying, I'm going to release the email about racial profiling, you expect that what you're going to get is an email in which Brett Kavanaugh says he supports racial profiling. Don't make me laugh during the show, Shannon. It's not nice. I'm not going to say farticus on the air. Why would I say farticus on the air? No, I'm not saying farticus. And don't ask me to say farticus. Oh, my gosh. Were we on the air just then? Okay, so the FCC just pulled the plug out of some combination of outright indecency and a shameful misappropriation of ancient history. Ajit Pai, you cleared that with him first. Thank you. Okay, where was I? Oh, yeah. So Cory Booker says, I'm going to release this email about racial profiling. He assumes correctly that almost nobody will read it. And the fact that he's releasing an email about racial profiling, he would only do that if it meant that it proved that Brett Kavanaugh were an unreconstructed racist. But it doesn't. In fact, it showed Brett Kavanaugh saying, we cannot have racial profiling in airport security, which is what this was about immediately following 9/11. There might be de facto, it might happen a little bit at airports, but when we're making these rules and these laws, there cannot be racial profiling allowed. Then you get the woman who, Christine Blasey Ford, accusing Brett Kavanaugh of trying to grope her, or actually groping her, 35 years ago. Two guys that she claims were there, they both say weren't there. Then you had a woman come out yesterday who said, I was in the same school as Ford, although I didn't know her, and we heard some vague rumors about it, so I think it's true. And now this morning, and nobody's covering this story, that same woman is now saying she has no idea whether it's true or not. One drive-by thing, it's like you drive by, lob a Molotov cocktail at Brett Kavanaugh, who for everything we can tell is a good man, a good judge, a good husband, a good father. And you got all these liberals out there who say, and say correctly, I want to make sure, okay, liberals, not just liberals, feminists, everybody watching the Me Too movement before it get, other than the most insane parts of it, say, guys who were sexual predators exhibit a behavior more than once. No actual sexual predator, tries to fool around with a girl one time, and I'm not talking about what Kavanaugh is accused of doing. I'm not calling that fooling around, okay? But it tries to do something one time and then stops, oh, that was bad, and never does it again. A sexual predator is a sexual predator. And anybody who was, there'd be more than one accusation by more than one woman at more than one time, just like all the Me Too cases we talked about. So you got all these people who, for all these months, who've said, it's never just once. Now with Brett Kavanaugh, you've got only a single accusation from 35 years ago. And I just want to remind you, it's never just once. Which means that if with Brett Kavanaugh, there's only one accusation, there's a pretty darn good chance either that it didn't happen, or if it did happen, it doesn't reflect on who he really is. If he was a drunk 17-year-old who did something he shouldn't have done. And for the record, I would say this very same thing if we were talking about a liberal nominee by a Democratic president. Keith Ellison's a whole different thing. Keith Ellison, they actually produced a recent medical report. Did you know about this? This just came out. You just mentioned Keith Ellison, but you probably don't even know about this. There's a medical clinic in Minnesota that just released a report from when Keith Ellison's former girlfriend went for some kind of medical treatment and told the hospital at the time that she was in an emotionally and physically abusive relationship with former Congressman Keith Ellison, but she couldn't talk about it in public because she was afraid of retribution. Keith Ellison is much more likely that he did the thing. And also that's recent in between two adults. All right, tell you what. I'm going to save the Pat Schroeder thing for this time tomorrow because it needs its own time. When we come back, I want to bring to you my conversation with Josh Penry, senior campaign strategist for Mike Kaufman for Congress. We'll talk about what's working and what's not. Joining us on our VIP line, my friend Josh Penry, former Republican leader in the state Senate. currently a partner at EIS Solutions and strategist for the Mike Kaufman for Congress campaign, which he also was in 2014 and 2016, where I would posit that Mike Kaufman faced more credible challengers than he does this time. But, Josh, I'm a little less confident this time, and I wanted to ask you to address a poll that the Denver Post wrote about that shows the Democrat Jason Crow ahead of Mike Kaufman.
Well, thanks for having me, Ross, and we'll debate my my haircut another time. Remember, bald is beautiful. But thanks for having us on. We, obviously work with the Kaufman campaign, and it's been a real honor to it. He's a tremendous leader for the state and country. It's sort of that old Mark Twain saw about rumors of demise. Every election cycle, we hear this is the toughest race he's ever going to have, and on some level, it's true. This is a tough election. It's a difficult district. But Mike is remarkably resilient because he represents the district well. There was a poll that's been pushed around all over the place. It was actually a New York Times poll, the Denver Post, and some other local outlets pushed out that said Mike was down by 10. And it's just, polls are polls, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time calling names, but it's just fundamentally not accurate, not a reflection of where this district is. One of the reasons Mike has performed so well, we know this district, we know it performs, we know where our votes are, and we know how to make a winning case. So greatly exaggerated, not right. This is a margin of error race. It's a very competitive race every cycle, and that's going to be the case this time as well.
And folks, if you see Kaufman campaign commercials on TV, these are done by Josh and his team at AIS. Josh, I have a question for you that's much broader than just the Kaufman campaign. Just as you look at the election season, I have a feeling, even more actually with some of the governor's ads and the Kaufman ads, that this is going to be a relentlessly negative campaign season. Do you see it that way? And is it that way because that's just what works these days, or that's the mood of the country right now? How do you see it?
Yeah, they are tough races, and I know people get tired of it, and I think actually probably a lot of people in the political class get tired of it as well. But it is, but these are also tough fights with real consequences. Jason Crow was handpicked by Nancy Pelosi to run in this seat because they thought his profile and resume would help her become the Speaker of the House. I mean, that's the bottom line. So they're spending, literally more than $1 million a week,
a week?
In American
Did you say a week?
A week, yeah, right. So, and that's part of what's going on in the polling. Jason Crow's getting a little sugar high because the spending advantage on his side is so prohibitive. But we've been through this rodeo before. We ran against Andrew Romanoff and Morgan Carroll, both when we were actually more experienced, formidable candidates. And by the time the election ran its course, obviously it turned out the way it did with a decisive victory for Mike.
How does Mike Kaufman, as a Republican, do so well in a district? I don't know the number. I'm guessing D plus 2 or 3, but I don't know. How does he do that?
He just works hard. I mean, that's part of it. And we also prosecute our case. Mike is not the most conservative member. That's why facially Jason Crow and Pelosi's entire argument is Mike votes with Trump 96% of the time. Anybody who reads the newspaper knows that's not the case. And they want to put their eggs in that basket. We're ready for it. We will deconstruct that door-to-door, face-to-face, TV ad by TV ad over the course of the next several weeks. But people just know fundamentally it's not true. They know Mike is an independent person. He's his own person. And he's at every barbecue. He's at every Kiwanis Club meeting. He's meeting with immigrant communities. He's meeting with small business owners. It's hard to smear a guy like Kaufman, and make no mistake, that's Crow and Pelosi's game. It's hard to smear a guy when you know him, and this district really does know him. So
that's a good point.
We've got to tell Mike's story, and we're going to do some vetting of our friend Jason Crow.
Okay, I've got about 90 seconds left, and I want to go down a road you just went down a little bit there. Every once in a while, I'll get a listener who is in that district, and I'm in Kaufman's district as well, and for the record, I've contributed to his campaign, who says, well, Kaufman's not pro-Trump enough or not conservative enough. And I say, you realize your alternative is a Democrat. No matter where you are on the Republican side, you're not going to do better in that district than Mike Kaufman. Do you want to elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, we go through that. It's part of the challenge of representing this district. Mike wins his primary at the assembly phase. Our numbers consistently show Republicans coming home because they know Mike is his own person. Whether you agree with him on every issue, he votes the district, he represents the people, and that's why more conservative voters who don't agree with some of his votes, are with him in the end. But it also goes to the heart of the dishonesty and the deceit that's implicit in the Pelosi and the Crow argument. Kaufman is his own man. Everybody knows that, and that'll be the argument we have over the next couple of weeks. And rumors from the New York Times of Kaufman's demise are once more greatly exaggerated.
Separate from that poll, is your gut instinct right now? I don't know whether you have polling or not, or whether you disclose it if you had it. But is your gut instinct that this is a very tight race right now?
It is, but it is every cycle.
Yeah,
this is a margin of error race. Like right after Labor Day, this thing is a jump ball, and so we know we've got work to do. In that sense, it's not exceptional, and so we're not getting spun up about this poll or this headline. We're slow and steady wins the race, and that's our approach, and we expect to come out on top on Election Day.
Josh Penry of EIS Solution, strategist for Mike Kaufman for Congress campaign. He helped him win in 2014 and 2016. We'll see what happens in 2018. Thanks so much for being here, Josh. Appreciate it.
You're the man, Ross. Thanks for having me.
All right. So let me just take a couple of moments here. I've been interacting with a listener on Twitter who's saying, well, why do Mike Kaufman's ads talk about how he's helped refugees in his district? Well, first of all, refugees are here legally. They came through a legal process, and he represents them as a member of Congress. Why shouldn't he talk about how he has helped refugees in his district? Don't forget, CD6 includes Aurora, which has a very large African population. I don't just mean African American, I mean African refugees who come here or immigrate here. Okay, so Mike Kaufman is representing his district. Second of all, and I repeat, I'm going to say this till I'm blue in the face. I'm going to say it until the election is over. Whoever wins, we'll see. But any Republican or conservative or just anybody who doesn't want to see Nancy Pelosi become Speaker of the House and Democrats run everything in the House of Representatives, if you don't vote for Mike Kaufman if you live in that district, you're an idiot. It's that simple. You will never do better if you are a Republican or conservative in that district than Mike Kaufman. All right, I'll be back tomorrow. We're going to have a great Friday together tomorrow. You have a great Thursday.
This is Denver's Talk Station, 630 KHOW, an iHeart radio station with Ross Kaminsky mornings, Michael Brown afternoons, KHOW Denver.
This report is brought to you